is Yankee Stadium. It's Old Timers Day, August 22nd, 1981 to be exact. An afternoon in which the Yankees are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Don Larson's perfect game. Standing at a microphone behind home plate and wearing a pinstriped uniform is Robert Merrill, the operatic baritone, who is in the middle of singing the national anthem. Just behind Merrill is Frank Messer, the master of ceremonies, and in the background, wearing a Brooklyn Dodgers jersey, is Roy Campanella, who is holding his blue cap over his heart. To the right of the Hall of Fame catcher is a man standing on the top step of the third base dugout with a camcorder perched on his shoulder, recording it all for posterity. His name? Greg Peterson. Welcome, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
My first question is, why baseball? What has that sport done for you over your lifetime?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in Allen Park, and as part of Allen Park is the fact that there's baseball there. There's baseball nearby. I played Little League in Willard Park, but at the same time, visualize, if you will, the various facilities there. Softball, baseball, think Jim's Adams Act, think baseball. All of that was right there. I lived in Allen Park. So whether you were by yourself or with a bunch of little kids in the neighborhood who had to play with a group of them, baseball was really the common denominator. And at the same time, Jamestown baseball, this ballpark, kind of came back in the minor leagues 1961 with the Jamestown Tigers. And so all of a sudden you're at the right age, right time, right interest. Little League baseball, I can honestly say one of the neighbors' fathers was Les James, who played Jamestown. My manager was Dwayne Schaefer, who played with the Jamestown Falcons. And so there was a number of people who were part of that world, part of this world here, which just became ingrained.
And who was the one that influenced you the most to appreciate the game, and maybe as a real young boy coming down to this ballpark?
Well, I got to say, I think everybody would have the same answer. Your father, your grandfather type of thing. And my dad was a big baseball fan. He was a Pirates fan. And we went to Forbes Field when we were kids and got autographs from the Willie Mazes and the Clementes, and many stories time will not permit. But also coming to the ballpark, I got to tell one anecdote, because this is a typical father this was probably a Sunday afternoon. He didn't want to go to the game, but he knew my grandfather was here. His name was Otto Peterson, and he knew he was at the ballpark. And so he did what probably a lot of fathers did. He just drove me here to the park, gave me 50 cents to go in, and said, go find your grandpa. Well, it was one of those days where there was probably 3,000 people. I had no idea whatsoever. And the irony of the whole thing, I'm walking around the concourse, around and round and round, and they say, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the 50,000th fan this year is Otto Peterson. And I hear his name. And I look up, and there he's standing in the grandstand. He stands up, and he wins a Blackstone dryer. I mean, that was what it does. That's how I found my grandpa that day. I would have never. I mean, I was probably 10 years old. A lost son abandoned by my dad. And so, but that's.
Well, was he happier to win the prize or to find you?
No, I think the prize had long-lasting effect, So, but that's just an irony of the whole thing, yeah.
One of the greatest players ever to play on this field turned out to be your Babe Ruth manager, Johnny Newman. Tell me what you remember about your association with him.
And that's the thing that I think we didn't appreciate completely at the time. How so many of the players who played in Jamestown stayed here and became impact people. And I mentioned Dwayne Schaefer a little bit earlier. I mentioned Les James, who really was Southside football Blue Devils. But Johnny Newman was my Babe Ruth manager. And Johnny was, growing up in years, bigger than life in more ways than one. He was huge. And he'd drive the car up there, and Jeff, his young son, would grab the bags. We'd all grab the bags. But John would sit there, and he'd give us these strange signs, because I was second baseman, of what to do and how to play. And the other team had no real idea when pickoff plays were being called by the manager hitting his face, left his hand on his cheek, and all of a sudden the catcher picked it up, second baseman had, guy turned around, and one of those blind pickoffs, and everybody picked him up. And he was doing that all the time. We won I was 13 years old, the Babe Ruth World Series here, and we played at the stadium. They're really my first time playing here. Yeah.
What were your impressions of this ballpark? What were your impressions of this ballpark when you were a kid? I can remember when I was dropped off for games when I was little, and I thought this was like Nirvana. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the same thing. Who would go into a major league ballpark? You walk in and you see, look at it's green, and you see the white, and you see the sounds, the ambient noise. I mean, it's not like your normal lawn. This is different. This is not like you were normally playing your ballpark. So when you played here, it was extraordinarily special to play here, to see here, etc. I tell one story before I forget. My little league manager was Dwayne Schaefer. A player who played with me was a guy named Hugh Imus. Hugh Imus was a pitcher, good one, and we were in VFW. And I can remember in right center field a guy who would be wearing a hat and just watching the game, a senior guy. Really didn't mean much other than it was Hugh Imus's grandfather. He'd come to the games up in Willard Park, for those that remember Willard. And I remember one day after a game, I came down here, and there was an old-timers game. And old-timers honoring players who had played in the major leagues. And I sat there with Hugh Imus. And next to me they introduced him as Hugh Bedient of, Red Sox superstar fame. And next to him was, Swat Erickson, again, another person. And next to him, Ray Caldwell. Now, at the time, it didn't mean a heck of a lot other than remember my grandfather again saying, coming down from where he was sitting higher, saying, get their autographs. And I did. And I thought that was so cool, especially a few years ago when I found that book, and those three are on a page. So it was a connector. So this ballpark is a connector to not only past, present, and tonight we see the future. So it's a really special location.
Speaking of big names, there's one that you've written about in the Society for American Baseball Research involving one Babe Ruth and his appearance at Celeron Park in 1921. Just give me a Cliff Notes version of what you discovered in your research about the Babe's appearance in Celeron.
Great story. In that, being interested in baseball generally, you heard the urban legends all the time. That Babe Ruth was in Chautauqua County. Babe Ruth had come here, and Babe Ruth had hit a ball into the lake. I mean, that's what you heard. I was going to debunk it. And so I, on behalf of the Society of American Baseball Research, did a deep dive. And remember the old microfilms at the Prendergast and all that stuff. And there were two separate newspapers. And sure enough, Babe Ruth came here. Now, this backstory is that in 1921, this is Judge Kennesaw Landis was the commissioner right after the Black Sox scandal. And one of the criteria is if you played in the World Series, you could not barnstorm. Judge Landis said you could not barnstorm. Guess who was in the 1921 World Series? Babe Ruth. Guess who said to you, Commissioner? Babe Ruth. Guess who got hurt during the Babe Ruth the World Series in 1921? Yankees are up 3-1. Slides into second base. Babe Ruth, he gets hurt. He can't play the rest of the series. He's out. Guess who wins? The New York Giants. So the Yankees lose the World Series. Commissioner Landis says you can't play because you're in the World Series. 5 days later, Bob Musil and Babe Ruth are in Jamestown. Guess who's here batting and playing? Babe Ruth, the same guy who couldn't play in the World Series for the last 3 games. Now, Landis made it loud and clear, the headlines. Landis to ban Ruth. Ruth to play in Celeron. I mean, those are the headlines. And it's fascinating. And Ruth came and he spoke at Jamestown High School, and he spoke on the subject of how bad it is to drink alcohol and to smoke tobacco. There's headlines on all of this. And as would have it, the next day they had the exhibition game, and during the batting practice, in fact, during the batting practice, Babe Ruth hit one into the lake. It's covered. Ruth hits one into the lake. So all that debunking I couldn't do it. So I instead wrote the article for the Society of American Baseball Research, the Babe Ruth World Series, printed it, the Post-Journal printed it, and the postscript, that following 5 days, I must have gotten 5 waterlogged baseballs, all signed by Babe Ruth. So if you come to my office, you can see at least 3 of them.
Well, speaking of autographs and memorabilia, I don't think there's anybody maybe in the country that has quite the collection of stuff that you have in all sports, but baseball especially. Can you just tell me about some of the things that you are especially fond of in your collection that, from autographs to baseballs to, I don't know. Go ahead and give me the rundown.
Well, I think what's interesting is that how did that all happen? I mean, how did you get baseballs? I mean, this is perhaps my grandfather was a salesman. Maybe that's part of the chutzpah of it all. But working with WJTN and WKSN on baseball stuff, actually, and the Resource Center. They were all, Merrill Rosen and Mike Felice were on the Resource Center board, and so they had a sense of humor. So I would say, hey, do you mind if I use your letterhead and see if I can get press passes? And they weren't going to cover it. So, yeah, have at it. So I would get press passes to old-timers to games in Yankee Stadium. Because Cindy, my wife over there, who's my biggest supporter, and she lived in New Jersey. So I would go there, visit the parents for a day, and then spend the day in New York going to an old-timers game. And I would do what you can't do. You cannot do. It says loud and clear on your press pass, thou shalt not get autographs. You shall not get autographs. So I said, I'm a lawyer. Possession's 9/10 of the law. Let's go for it. What's the worst that could happen? I get an autograph, they throw me out. So, literally, I was at a place where my bag was full of some film, but occasionally, basically, baseball is getting single-signed autographs. But one story. This was up in Buffalo, they had an old-timers game, and so I'm out there taking still pictures, and my camera's jammed. And all the players, Tom Seaver and all those guys are out there. My camera is jammed, and I can't believe it. I've been preparing for this for weeks on end. My bag is full of balls. I'm loaded. I'm everything. And I got to go in and try to unclick, the camera. You maybe have seen that happen, Scott. And I'm there mad as hell. And so I'm sitting on the bench on the first base dugout by myself, mad, and everybody's out there taking pictures. And out from the runway, because I'm right next to it, and he comes looking out all by himself, looking around, and it's Joe DiMaggio. So I do what every guy would do who's got any sort of moral compass, grab my bag, get the ball, grab a pen, and say, Mr. DiMaggio, would you please sign this? He kind of looked around and said, I guess it's safe. He signs the ball, gives it to me, I put it back in, then continue to pretend like I'm working on my camera, and he looks around and immediately goes back in the dugout. That's it. You don't see him again until he literally is introduced. He waves, doffs his hat, comes back in, leaves. That's it. I probably have the one autograph he ever gave in Buffalo, New York. But that was bizarre.
Well, speaking of bizarre, in reference to that old-timers game at Yankee Stadium that I referenced at the beginning, didn't you also see Joe DiMaggio down in the bowels of Yankee Stadium that same day?
Yeah. I got lost. This is really kind of funny. I'm out on the field, And there they are. I mean, Don Larson, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, Roger Maris. It's a who's who. And I don't like the Yankees, but I understand and I appreciate that's greatness. That is greatness. So I'm there taking pictures with this. I've got a small camera. I've got a Super 8 sound movie camera, not camcorder, a movie camera. I got everything that nobody has, because you can tell I'm just a rookie. I'm an amateur, and at the same time pulling out and getting autographs. And the guys are looking at me like, "What is this?" But they dutifully sign. I'm waiting to get thrown out. So, anyways, they usher everybody off because they're going to start the game. And so the next thing you know, I'm looking around, putting my stuff in the bag, and everybody's gone. And I don't even know how to get out of what is really the first base dugout. So I go up the runway. I turn right when I should have turned left to get to the mezzanine. I lost. So I take another right, and the next thing you know, I'm on the visitors' dugout, and there's Pee Wee Reese. Pee Wee Reese of the Dodgers saying, "Come on, kid, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm lost." He goes, "Stand here. Stand right by the bat rack." And that's where the picture comes from. The Gats are they're playing the Kansas City Royals, and that crazy picture you referred to is that the national anthem. I'm standing up because Pee Wee Reese said, "Stand here." And next to Pee Wee Reese, if you look, is George Brett of the Kansas City Royals. It's crazy. It's crazy timing. And how did I get the picture? How did I get the picture? This is 5 years later. 5 years later, I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida. This is gin joint stuff. And it's raining like heck, and I'm at my Cindy's grandparents in St. Petersburg. I got a little kid, and they're crying. So I do what every good father did, left. And so I went down, and there was a little store, kind of like Linwood Dairy, Ed Tomasini's here. You know, they had a store, and it just said sports cards. So I pull in, and I go, "Do you have any autograph stuff?" I'm an autograph guy. And he goes, here's a book. So he pulls out a book, and this store is like the size of this tent. And I'm looking, and sure enough, there's a picture. And there is Robert Merrill, Frank Messer, Roy Campanella, and I'm thinking, I was at that game. I'm telling the guy, I was at that game, and it was signed by Messer and Merrill. And I'm telling you, I was there. So the price went from $1 to like 10 immediately. Turned the page, and it's the same picture, but just set us over our side, and there I am. Of course, I scream, "There I am! I told you! That's me!" So now that picture went from $1 to 20. And I bought it. What are you going to do? You're going to buy it. So the chances of me even having that picture ranks right with, Dave Krishon, getting the jersey. I mean, all the gin joints in the world, in a St. Petersburg store, raining out, my wife yelling at me when I get back, "What did you get? What'd you buy?" And I explained that. So that's how I got the picture. It's just borders on the bizarre. But yeah, anyways, to complete the long answer to a very simple question, later I'm lost. So the game is over. It's a 3-inning game. I'm walking around still lost because I'm by myself. I don't have anybody. So I'm walking up a staircase, and I open a door, and there is Joe DiMaggio with his buddies, his Italian buddies, all smoking cigars. And it's his birthday. It's his birthday. They have a birthday cake. So I do, again, what every strange guy who has, never knowing he'll never be invited back again, I pull out my little pocket camera and take a picture. There's a beautiful picture of Joe DiMaggio smiling in front of a birthday cake in a private room in Yankee Stadium. Crazy. How did you find out this information?
Well, as you would always say, if I was sitting there, I have my sources.
I've never told that story.
But speaking of memorabilia, I also found in a file at the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, Greg, several baseball cards with your image on it. And I think a bunch of people may have, because you've spearheaded that effort to have Tarp Skunk's hat and, a position or title with the team. Well, I flipped your card over, and it reads as follows. With his years of experience, Greg is a talented player-manager who can pull together the right team members and get the most out of them to accomplish a goal. Never afraid to do some of the heavy lifting himself, Greg is a reliable starting pitcher who gets projects off of the ground and has the stamina to go deep into the game to bring efforts to a successful conclusion. And when things seem lost, Greg can be summoned for relief duty and get the save as he did when he took steps to keep baseball in Jamestown in the form of the Tarp Skunks. What is your reaction to that bio?
Well, let me tell you. First of all, it was just, Steve Watterson of the Resource Center. I don't know if anybody's here from the Resource Center. There's a backstory. Sam Teresi's here, and way back when we were able to work with the Expos and the Brofmans and the Resource Center, sold season tickets and a lot of that. And Charles Brofman actually came here, so we raised a lot of money for the Resource Center, and as a result, and I was on the board, and they did a night for me. So one of the nights they did here, they handed out these baseball cards. Steve Watterson made them up. And I read the back. I thought, this is a bio. Holy cow. At least 25% is true. This is good. So when you get it, it's floating around. There's probably a couple at the Sports Hall of Fame. So, yeah, it's great. And obviously the whole thing's metaphoric. As a starting pitcher, was a starting pitcher in Little League. I once pitched a one-hitter over at Fluvanna Avenue. Rick Putney hit a home run. They're still in the Chautauqua looking for it. So, yeah, that was my pitching career in a nutshell.
Finally, last month, the Tarp Skunks presented a plaque to Greg, and it happens to be over here on the table near Randy, and it bears the same image that appears on the baseball card, and underneath it are the following words: in recognition of Gregory L. Peterson for his love of the game and his tireless commitment, advocacy, and leadership in preserving the legacy of baseball in Jamestown, his beloved hometown. That, my friends, is a perfect way to end this interview. Thank you, Greg, for all you've done.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. That was great.